Welcome to Creature Guy Live Daily News. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ethan. Today we're going over sauropods, neo-ornithischians, and certain invasive species over in Texas. So, from Sci News, heading back to the Mesozoic, new sauropod dinosaur unearthed in India. Paleontologists from the Indian Institute of Technology and the Geological Survey of India have described a new genus and species of dicryosaur sauropod dinosaur from a fossilized skeleton found in western India. Interesting. So it's the dicryosaurs. Oh, it's showing three different species, it seems here. So, when it comes to the dicryosaurs, it's a smaller lineage of diplodocid sauropod dinosaurs. These animals only evolved somewhere around 166 million years ago during the late mid Jurassic, and then would mysteriously go extinct about 122 million years ago during the early Cretaceous. Now, you have a wide range of like smaller sized sauropods within the dicryosaur lineage of diplodocids, and that would include animals such as Amargasaurus and Brachyutalophan. So, when it comes to these animals, for the most part, they're not really reaching much more than 40 to 45 feet in length. They're pushing somewhere between 12 to 14 meters and probably don't weigh much more than 8 to 9 tons. That actually might be pushing it when it comes to the weights, considering these are diplodocid sauropods, and certain diplodocids were more heavily built compared to others. But when it came to the dicryosaurs, usually you're not seeing species reach much more than maybe 6 to 7 tons. So 8 to 9 might be a bit too much. It's possible for maybe the 45 footers, but it's just that you have earlier species of sauropods, well, specifically diplodocids, that like Barosaurus from the late Jurassic of Wyoming, Colorado, or Supersaurus probably didn't weigh much more than, well, specifically Barosaurus, maybe 20 to 25 tons. Supersaurus was still reaching over 45 tons, considering the animal was 130 feet in length or pushing well over 40 meters. So the newly described species roamed our planet during the Middle Jurassic period, approximately 100 and
I can't pronounce this person's name, but they just said hi. It's Kel Kel something Garcia. Sorry.
welcome, fellow sauropod. I guess I'll just say brachiosaur in this instance, unless you like titanosaurs. So, this species came in about 167 million years ago, or evolved. Scientifically named Tharosaurus indicus, the ancient reptile. Whoa, whoa. Okay, dinosaurs are not reptiles. They did evolve from a lineage of reptiles called the Archosauromorphs, but they became warm blooded and are their own distinct group of endothermic animals. So the ancient reptile was a type of dinosaur was a type of dicryosaurid, a family of diplodicoid sauropods that existed from the Middle Jurassic to the early Cretaceous. And it does seem with all these different species, in fact,
Identify as Carnotaurus, and it says, "What sauropod is that?"
it seems to be the Tharosaurus indicus, but I'm not sure if it's showing the animal in this representation. So I'm a bit no, none of them. Okay. So, let's actually bring up Brachytrechalopon. Trachyelopan.
Okay, that's too small. Hold on. Okay, this is funny looking. Hold on.
Well, what on earth? This guy looks like he's been feeding on trophy rock his entire life, except he's not a deer. This, gosh, okay. So when it comes to Trephalopon, this is definitely a shorter necked species of diplodocid and sauropod in general. I'd say compared to, actually, I can't think of another species of sauropod that has a shorter neck. There were also different species of prosauropods that had shorter necks compared to their body size, but they weren't necessarily very robust. They still tend to be quite thin and narrow.
Identify as Carnotaurus said, "It looks like an Amegarosaurus."
It is related to the Amargasaurus. I think that's what you're trying to say. AMAR. Okay. But yeah, it is pretty distinct in morphology. A Margosaurus does have a much longer neck compared to its body size. The skull is similar. And the neck structure, obviously, you have it where Margosaurus has very large, elongated vertebrae compared to its overall neck structure, and probably amongst some of the longest neck vertebrae of like in terms of height of any species of dinosaur. But when it comes to Brachytrachylepon, this animal, it is interesting. In some cases, it's almost like it has a bit of a shape of the ornithopods from North Africa that occurred a bit later in time. I believe Brachytrachylepon was existing in northern Africa around 125 million years ago. And this specific species of animal, like I'm comparing it to the Ouranosaurus iguanodontid from Niger and Egypt, but that animal won't evolve until somewhere around 110 million years ago. So, Brachytrachylepon, I don't know of any species of Spinosaur that it might have coexisted with in the region. It's also showing certain species of smaller neotheropods running amongst the larger species. Now, this animal was feeding on different species of ferns and very short conifer trees. I mean, even if it reared up on its hind legs, it probably couldn't reach very high up into the trees. Now, also feeding on larger species of shrubs. This animal probably wasn't much more than 25 to 30 feet in length. They're pushing around 8 to 9 meters and maybe weighed somewhere around 3 tons. So it was a much smaller species. When it came to the overall or the skull structure, like the teeth are going to be slightly different than those of earlier species of diplodocids like Barosaurus and Supersaurus from the Jurassic, and even a bit distinct, especially from animals like Amargasaurus and Dicryosaurus. So other members, especially of the Dicryosaur lineage. I don't mind, this specific reconstruction right here, but it definitely I think it might be, unfortunately, a bit long for the Dicryosaurid, Brachytrachylepon, which I think it looks better in this way, but it's just that Brachytrachylepon has such a, I guess you could say malformed sort of morphology. I'm not sure if this could stand with the Brachytrachylepon skull structure. It possibly could. This almost correlates with like another dicryosaur from further south over in Niger called Nigerosaurus. And I also believe that animal existed slightly later. It was towards the very end of the Dicryosaurus lineage. Yeah, these other representations are definitely giving a more athletic sort of a build for the Brachytrachylepon. I am surprised by how many reconstructions there are. I think the tail of this animal might be a bit long, but also, I mean, the thing is, I really like do prefer this sort of a stature, but this is what we have to go with. He's not a terrible looking sauropod. It's just I just think he's a bit odd, but I guess that's also what somewhat makes him interesting. He almost looks like a pet, and yeah, you could ride him, and he definitely would do a great job in carrying loads of hay. or
identify as
would.
a Carnotaurus really does like Dilophosaurus. Says, did Dilophosaurus eat Plesiosaurus?
Well, Dilophosaurus and Plesiosaurus did not coexist at the same time, or if they did, probably wouldn't have come into contact with each other. Considering it also doesn't seem that Dilophosaurus really even hung out on the coast. We seem to find him, I think. Well, I might have to correct myself on that. I think there is evidence for Dilophosaurus at least hanging out or possibly fishing in different rivers, creeks, and lakes, maybe even certain floodplains, but I'm not sure about the coast. But however, Plesiosaurus only evolved somewhere around 160 to 165 million years ago. So you have a word Dilophosaurus is inhabiting Arizona about 190, somewhere between 190 and 195 million years ago. So it might have come into contact with certain earlier sauropteans, but and if they washed ashore, Dilophosaurus is likely not going to be entering the water to hunt for plesiosaurs.
I Willem says, new dino. Who is this? Are you speaking of the one that we're talking about right now or the one the article is about?
Well, at the moment, I'm talking about Brachytracholopon, but the article is referring to the um, newer species Tharosaurus, which is another species of Dicryosaur sauropod related to Brachytracholopon. But yeah, I think this still is a really interesting species. It just has such an odd physique, especially the original pictures. What is it here? Well, I guess he's one of them. I think it is interesting they did add the massive osteoderms that are pretty unique to the diplodocid lineage. So it's not surprising that animals like even the larger Dicryosaurs would have had this characteristic. It doesn't seem to be something we would find on a Margosaurus. Another Dicryosaur that has a similar reconstruction or overall morphology to a Margosaurus.
That neck is
Yeah,
so
like this.
short.
Yeah, this individual. Um, That is quite odd, but he looks very friendly. Is there another? Oh yeah, these guys. Yeah, it's like
Carnotaurus just asked, did Dilophosaurus encounter Monolophosaurus?
no Monolophosaurus. I think it's because the morphology also of these animals, or Monolophosaurus and Dilophosaurus, look somewhat similar, but they have very drastic differences. So
Did they encounter each other?
No, they didn't. Monolophosaurus also existed somewhere around 165 to 167 million years ago, whereas Dilophosaurus about 190 to 193 million years ago. And Monolophosaurus was also existing in another part of the world. So now you could say, well, the continents for the most part were still heavily connected to each other. So it probably was possible at certain points, if they lived at the same time, they could have come into contact with each other, but they didn't. I mean, when it comes to Dilophosaurus, for the most part, it seemed to have been alone in terms of not coming into contact with other larger predators for the early Jurassic. I mean, you pretty much had a Ramonolophosaurus entered or evolved even after larger predators like Megalosaurus were already existing and terrorizing different parts of Europe. Okay, well, let's leave this fat chump and head back. So, first described by the German paleontologist Werner Hanetzk in 1914, dicryosaurid fossils are known from North America, Asia, Africa, and South America. Sauropods, a speciose group of saurischian dinosaurs that dominated the terrestrial landscapes until the end Cretaceous, are characterized by a small skull, elongated neck and tail, columnar limbs, and quadrupedal gait, said Indian Institute of Technology researcher Sunil Papai and colleagues. Okay, yeah, that's very obvious. Within Sauropoda, Dicryosauridae represents a clade of small-bodied diplodocid that are known for their distinctive vertebral morphology with long-paired neural spines. That depends on the species. Some, like the Brachytracholophan, it is a bit less so when it comes to the elongated vertebrae, but it is still present. Um, Maybe Ouranosaurus iguanodontid wasn't the best species of iguanodontid to compare the back vertebrae to. Maybe Barsboldia would be a bit better, which is a hadrosaur from the Late Cretaceous of Mongolia, but it only has a slightly elevated, elongated back vertebrae. You could also compare it with certain species of spinosaurs, like possibly Suchomimus to an extent. Not so much irritator. Certain species, I believe, from Southeast Asia, or possibly another like Ichthyovenator, but Ichthyovenator, yeah, you could possibly. I mean, besides that, compare it with that specific theropod, despite that split sort of along the pelvic region. So, Dicryosaurids range in age from the Middle Jurassic, Early Cretaceous, and are mostly known from the Gondwanan landmasses of Africa and South America, besides a few Laurasian occurrences in the United States and China. Um, so it's just showing a handful of areas where the three families of Diplodocoi are from. So both Dicryosauridae, Diplodocidae, and Rebeccasauridae are families of Diplodocoi.
Identified carnivore says, "Do you think dinosaurs would evolve into humanoid creatures if steroid if the asteroid hadn't hit?"
Um, yeah, I've thought about that too. I really don't think so. I think they would just form into other lineages of pretty much stereotypical types of theropods, sauropods, and ceratopsians, hadrosaurs. Because it seems to be like even towards the mid Triassic or around 230 to 235 million years ago, when you had some of the first species of theropods evolving, along with the earlier prosauropods. In some cases, they weren't too different in when it comes to quite a bit of their morphology to later groups of dinosaurs, especially the earlier prototheropods. They're not necessarily referred to as that, but they're not true members of Theropoda, such as the Herrerasaurs. They're very theropod-like. And then, obviously, as you reach somewhere around 215 to 220 million years ago, you start running into true species of prosauropods, theropods, and I just think that they would continue with very similar forms. Um,
Wait, how large were the first ceratopsians?
the first original ones were probably not much more than 4 to 8 pounds, or pushing somewhere between 2 to 3 kilograms. They were quite small over in Asia. It's also possible you might have had some earlier species over in Europe too. They're just very rare to uncover over in that specific continent. So the remains of Tharosaurus indicus were recovered from the Hussheimer Formation near Hethwy village, the Indian state of Rajasthan. The fossils included disarticulated but associated specimens of the axial skeleton spread over an area of 25 meters square. According to the researchers, the specimens represent the first ever remains of a Dicryosaurpod from India. That's interesting. I guess I was wondering why they were showing the map up here as just a lonely Dicryosaur. As I thought that there had been other species discovered in the region, unless I'm confusing it for another lineage of Diplodocoi, or just other, probably Titanosaurs is what I'm thinking of, considering those are more abundant in India, especially later into the Cretaceous.
Um, Identified as carnivore said, "Did a Scutosaurus live in the Permian?"
Yeah, oh yeah. That was a jump back. So that would be somewhere around 253 to 256 million years ago, with that species of like the relatives of different anapsids, which is pretty much the family of reptiles that turtles are a part of, tortoises as well. But it was just a highly evolved diapsid for its time. And that species of animal could probably reach somewhere around 1,800 to 2,400 pounds, or pushing somewhere around 1,000 kilograms. And I'm trying to think where specifically it was discovered. It's not hitting me at the moment. Yes, it was from the late Permian period.
Hold on, I'm just pulling it up real quick so that wait, is this accurate?
It's really not a bad reconstruction. I do like the Walkie with Monsters look for Scutosaurus. But this is from the book, not the show. So it's from the Complete Guide to Prehistoric Life. This one's okay. I think there might be something a bit off about the legs, but I can't really identify what it is. They definitely have the stomach very high off of the ground. This one looks a little more mobile, or just seems to have like a much larger ability to quickly maneuver. And it also was an herbivore, so likely feeding on different species of ferns at the time.
This one
They're
just looks like a monster.
Yeah, it seems like they they just took a bit of a stereotyped Scutosaurus reconstruction and then gave him massive shoulders. They gave him like extremely large upper arms,
But little back
and
legs.
Popeye forearms. Yeah, that is an odd thing when it comes to Scutosaurus. It's almost like with what we see in different species of Megarodontids or the saber-toothed cats later on in the Cenozoic era. They have very small forelimbs, I mean, hind limbs compared to their forelimbs. But this is also something that we see with the different species of brachiosaurs later on to the Jurassic and the early Cretaceous. So why, specifically, these three very distinct lineages of animals decided to evolve this similar trait? Yeah, that is
I
a
like this
big
face
question.
better.
They definitely have very robust forelimbs when looking at the overall different species. I'm not sure if this is a Scutosaurus or it's another close relative because there were a variety of different species of Permian herbivores that looked similar to Scutosaurus, but they're their own distinct species as well as genre.
Said it was done by someone in DeviantArt.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's a really good reconstruction of whatever species this is. I mean, he definitely has that late Permian herbivore sort of stern look. Or, yeah, he's probably just annoyed that it's the dry season and he's having a bit of trouble finding a certain ferns. Or maybe it's the rut. He's trying to um, ward off different males.
Identify as carnivore said, "Did you hear about chicken source?"
Oh, yeah, way back. Um, yeah, unfortunately, they didn't hatch the chick. It seemed to have been growing a tail. And I think it was also something that was being done by Jack Horner and certain other scientists.
Seriously?
Yeah. Um, But then they just stopped it. I mean, I thought it was actually kind of interesting. It was just seemed to be creating an elongated tail, and there were teeth also occurring on the chicken embryo as well. But then they just stopped it. It's not necessarily as nuts as bringing back, species that have been extinct for or thousands of years, or in the dinosaurs' case, over 66 million.
Or as goofy as the direwolf?
Well, yeah, those wolves were pretty much a scam. It was just there were certain gray wolves. Don't exactly know what specifically they changed about their genetics, but it's still Canis lupus, not Inoscion, which is a completely different genus of wolf back in the Ice Age of the Pleistocene epoch. I thought there was another animal they were trying to claim that they brought back, but um, maybe I'm thinking of something that they cloned. So, back to the article. The discovery provides new insights into sauropod diversity of the Indian Gondwana, with important implications for the origin and dispersal of Neosauropoda. Tharosaurus indicus is among the earlier diverging dicryosaur sauropods, or dinosaurs, and its stratigraphic age makes it the earliest known diplodicoid dinosaur globally. Paleo, did they say how old was this creature? 167 million years old. Yep, that breaks the record. Because it was 166 million beforehand. While that doesn't sound like a lot, that's huge. There's a lot that can change in a massive amount that can change in evolution in a million years. You can have huge evolutionary changes in few decades sometimes. But let's see. Paleobiogeographic considerations of the new species seen in conjunction with the other Indian Jurassic sauropods suggests that Tharosaurus indicus is a relic of a lineage that originated in India and underwent rapid dispersal across the rest of Pangaea. You did have it, like, especially during the mid Jurassic when many of the continents were connected to each other, and especially further back, and you had it where Antarctica was quite accessible. Even later into the Mesozoic, Antarctica was accessible to species from different parts of Australia and certain points South America. So, um, yeah, this is not too surprising. I mean, this is how you had different species of ornithopods, different species of sauropods, carnosaurs, megalosaurs reaching different parts of the earth. Prosauropods, too. Okay, let's head to another part of the Mesozoic. So, from Sinews, new Neo-Ornithischian dinosaur unearthed in Thailand. So, Minomacursor funoensis. Okay. This isn't exactly an unheard of species of Neo-Ornithischian, but we're going to go over his discovery. So, it is the earliest known Neo-Ornithischian dinosaur from Southeast Asia, as well as one of the best preserved dinosaurs ever found in the region. Okay, that is interesting. That I did not know that it was the oldest over in this part of the continent. He is not a very large species. I believe he is somewhere around 4 to 7 feet in length. They're pushing somewhere around 1.3, 1.4 meters to maybe somewhere around 2.4 meters in length. So, my Minomacursor funoensis roamed our planet during the Upper Jurassic epoch, approximately 145 million years ago. That is like near the very boundary of the Cretaceous period. So, it is quite interesting the stage of the Earth, or at least the period in time that this animal is existing in. The ancient beast is a member of Neornithischia, a diverse group of dinosaurs that includes ornithopod and marginocephalian dinosaurs, as well as many earlier forms. Basically, Neornithischiae, which would lead on to Ornithischiae, would include the different species of stegosaurs, ankylosaurs, nodosaurs, pachycephalosaurs, ceratopsians, and the ornithopods, so like the hadrosaurs and guanodontids, as well as the Thessalosauros. So let's see. Neornithischiae is a clade. Okay, also referring to as hycephalodontids. Hycephalodontids technically still exist. Yeah, let's
What are they?
they're a small group of dinosaurs that would have consisted of animals such as Hycephalodon.
Oh, I meant you
Um,
said they still technically exist.
they're a group of ornithopods. I think sometimes they're referred to as invalid.
Oh,
I
you don't mean they're alive today?
No, no, no.
It's
Oh no, they don't exist. Well, I mean they did, but it was about like 150 million years ago. You had certain species evolving. So the classification of basal Neornithischians was present and debated by many paleontologists, still is. In Asia, the earliest Neornithischian is Sanxiosaurus modawensis from the Middle Jurassic Xingtian Formation of China. Other species have been described from the Middle to Late Jurassic of Sichuan, China. Agylosaurus louderbaci, Hengsilosaurus multidens, and Shaosaurus dashanpensis from the lower Shakshamwao formation, as well as Yandusaurus hunghensis from the upper Shakshamwao formation. Sheesh. Basal Neornithischians from Asia also include Calindrodromius zabecalicus. Finally, somebody from Siberia, which bore feather-like structures. Oh yeah, I guess I do forget that occasionally, especially with these smaller Neornithischians, are some of the species that we do have preserved pigment fibers of or evidence for these animals containing feathers. though it would have occurred on certain species of ceratopsians as well. Okay, let's bring up another species of herbivore, the Hippodraco, Hippodraco.
At least that sounds like it's spelled.
Yeah, it is interesting why they named it hippo. Not entirely sure whether or not we found this animal amongst any like lake deposits or certain floodplains, but it's very likely this animal was living amongst certain floodplains. Now, this animal or this species of Neo-Ornithischian, because here's the interesting thing, it's not classified as a member of the iguanodontid lineage of Ornithischian dinosaurs. Now, these two raptors in the front here, it's a bit of a question as to what this animal that's hunting the Hippodraco in this instance could be, considering Utah Raptor has not evolved yet. Hippodraco was existing over in Utah, but around 139 to 142 million years ago. So at the very beginning of the Cretaceous period, Utah Raptor doesn't seem to evolve for at least another 4 million years. Um, Unless we have found Hippodraco in certain younger sediments, which is certainly possible, considering these interpretations seem to be showing Utah Raptor having a preference for Hippodraco breakfast. So, um, this is a bit of a question. There were other different species of ornithopods that Utah Raptor would have hunted as well, but also coexisting with Hippodraco. You had also earlier different species of sauropods at the time. And with the pterosaurs at this point in the Cretaceous is when we start to see a very large evolutionary change and the um, evolution of a wide variety of different families of pterosaurs as well.
Yeah, here's
So,
another one.
yeah, I must be mixing up the Hippodraco's time span. Or what might have occurred is later into the Hippodraco's presence is when Utah Raptor first evolved. So,
Carnotaurus just asked, is Giga or T Rex bigger?
well, when it comes to length, um, the Giganotosaurus is slightly longer than T Rex. When it comes to weight, T Rex outmaxes Giganotosaurus and also outmaxes Mapusaurus, a close relative, Giganotosaurus as well. When it comes to the skull length, Giganotosaurus is a little slightly longer skull, but the overall robustness is where um, T Rex outperforms. So you can have it where Giganotosaurus is probably on average weighing somewhere around 8.5 tons, and T Rex is pushing somewhere around 9 to 9.5 tons in that area, possibly a bit larger too. Mapusaurus is probably around 8.5 tons. So Hippodraco is also not a large species of ornithischian, or I guess you could say in some cases iguanodontid, but it could still reach somewhere around 20 to 22 feet in length. They're pushing 6.7 meters, and probably weighed somewhere around 2 to 3,000 pounds. They're pushing around 1,000 to 1,400 kilograms. Yeah. Okay. Well. Yeah. This is Hippodraco. This is from a while back. Yeah, I think this is, I believe, based on a real discovery that occurred where there was a Hippodraco and several Utah raptors found in the same place. The problem is that when it comes to suggesting whether or not Utah raptor did hunt in packs, which is still heavily debated, but this is one of the only instances of where there might be evidence for that occurring. And the question is, were there several like Utah Raptor individuals that just happened to see the stuck Hippodraco and they ended up getting stuck themselves? But it could have been a pack as well. So it's a big mystery. Yeah, wow. Several representations of Utah Raptors going after Hippodraco. Okay. I'm gonna take a deeper look at what's going on here. So, let's see. Whoa! Well, here's the skeleton of the Ornithischian or of Minomacursor. This is pretty good. I think that's from. What would that be showing?
Is it the other side?
Um, Maybe. I mean, there seems to be a foot or a hand. Um, hmm.
I don't know.
Another individual. So the exceptional articulated skeleton of Minimacursor funuensis was found at the Phu Noi locality in the lower part of the Phu Kradung Formation, Kelasin Province, Thailand. This dinosaur is the earliest Neornithischian species from Southeast Asia and is one of the best preserved dinosaurs found in the region. Yeah, I think that's still like an incredible find, but um yeah, it's just a bit confusing on the second part. The Phu Noi locality contains a wealth of specimens and has yielded an exceptionally articulated skeleton, which represents one of the best preserved dinosaurs ever found in Southeast Asia. This is the earliest record of Neornithischians in Southeast Asia and the first dinosaur taxon named from the Phu Kradung Formation of Thailand. Minimacursor funuensis also shows a combination of characters resembling those of late Jurassic to early Cretaceous small-bodied ornithischian dinosaurs from China. You also had a wide range of other species of the smaller ornithischians at this point in different parts of the world. They weren't exactly new. I mean, you also had it where larger species of ornithischians. I mean, this is 145 million years ago. You could travel back around 5 to 10 million years and come into contact with earlier relatives of like the European and Asian iguanodontids, such as Camptosaurus, Dryosaurus over in North America. Certain well, you could even say like the stegosaurs are also somewhat related to this individual, but a bit far off into the family tree. So, let's see. So, the discovery of this dinosaur provides new information about the biodiversity and biogeography and early evolutionary history of Neornithischians during the late Jurassic, early Cretaceous time interval. Many of the remaining bones are still under preparation, including another skull. These unpublished specimens may provide a better understanding of the biology of Minomacursor funuensis in the future. Um, okay, so trying to think, we're 145 million years ago. Trying to think. Well, actually, let's bring up larger species. The what is it? Wasn't there like a species of larger ornithopod that I mentioned earlier? Well, besides the hippodroco, or was that it?
That might have been it.
Um, Actually, you know what? Let's bring up that other guy, the Ouranosaurus. So Ouranosaurus. Yeah, so this is a bit of a distant relative to the Hippodroco, but this animal was existing over in different parts of Egypt, Morocco, around 110 million years ago. So about 10 to 15 million years before the beginning of the late Cretaceous period. And this animal was slightly larger, probably pushing around 23 to 26 feet in length, or pushing 7 to 8 meters, and probably weighed somewhere around 3 tons. So it's coexisting not with Spinosaurus. This tends to be a bit of a misconception. Spinosaurus won't evolve for probably another 12 million years. And when it comes to the Tyrannosaurus and its predatory contemporaries, it would have coexisted with Spinosaurs such as the Baryonychid Suchomimus. But this animal, like we were talking about earlier with the Dicryosaurs, had a very elongated back vertebrae. And I guess you could say the opposite of what we find in those late Permian herbivores, the Scutosaurs, is that they have extremely long hind limbs compared to their forelimbs. And like the same thing when you're looking at the Brachiosaurs, and they have very long forelimbs compared to their hind limbs. And this animal is quite the opposite. But in this case, I'm not sure if this is like Jurassic World or Prehistoric Kingdom model, but it's showing the animal with very small forelimbs compared to its body size. It's
Prehistoric Kingdom.
oh, it still does seem that I believe this animal had the ability to walk on all fours, but is very much able to efficiently walk or run bipedally. So it was likely just feeding on different species of ferns and flowers during the early Cretaceous period of North Africa. So inhabiting different floodplains and open conifer forests. There were also different sauropods in the region that it coexisted with too. But this is one of the few species of iguanodontid that existed in the region. And the iguanodontids at this point had also gone through a wide variety of different evolutionary stages, but it seems to be that later into their evolution, they seem to have somewhat decreased in their overall robustness, which is quite interesting. But they did evolve a wide range of different types of skull structures. And as you can see with Tyrannosaurus, it's a bit more of like you can see the hadrosaur, um, like the future hadrosaur sort of skull morphology starting to evolve. That's not as present as in certain earlier iguanodontids like Iguanodon. But Iguanodon was also inhabiting England about 135 million years ago. Whereas this is somewhere around 25 million years afterwards.
Okay, why does his face look flat?
Um, yeah, I think it's giving him a bit more of like a Saurolophon sort of a skull, maybe a lambeosaur, almost like a skull structure to an extent. But I don't mind that model. Yeah, this one's not bad. I mean, the forelimbs seem to be a bit more matching with the rest of the body. But also, when it came to the later iguanodontids, their thumb spikes also decreased in size, which is it's quite odd considering this animal is having to deal with even larger species of predators compared to the iguanodon, and iguanodon had much larger thumb spikes compared to its body size.
Okay, this guy's funny looking.
Oh wow, yeah, I don't mind this depiction. I mean, they gave it a very large throat sack. But also when it came to the elongated vertebrae, not sure exactly what they're fleeing from. Now, when it comes to the youngsters, I'm not sure if we have found any younger individuals of Tyrannosaurus, but I would assume that their overall back vertebrae, you could say it still is somewhat in the depiction, but would probably be a lot shorter compared to their body size, unlike when looking at the adults. At least when we're looking at different species of ceratopsians based on the juveniles, or in some cases, the babies that we have discovered, especially of Triceratops, for instance, their horns and frills are extremely short and dull compared to their head structure, unlike with what you see in later juveniles or older juveniles, as well as subadults. I would assume the same thing would have occurred in Tyrannosaurus with its back vertebrae. It's kind of like when looking at certain species of theropod dinosaurs, and their overall body morphology is not as heavily built as later or older individuals. So the head structure does seem to showcase like a younger ornithopod in this instance. But overall, it's a really good depiction. Seems to be like they're running through maybe a forest that's gone through a prolonged drought, considering animals like Tyrannosaurus, the different Neornithischians like the Myanmar over in Thailand likely experience different wet and dry seasons. Oh, yeah.
That guy's got some fat thighs.
I think it's from a book, but I can't recall what. Let's see. Yeah, this Spinosaurus from the time. I mean, I guess he was okay. He has some issues, like especially his elongated back vertebrae. It should be a lot more rectangularish.
Looking at his snout.
Yeah, his snout is a bit odd too. It's got a little too much of a like a not a pelican, but somewhere in between. I'm not sure what pterosaurs. Maybe those are like small as darkids that are perched on his snout. Now the Tyrannosaurs in the background, they are making them out to be huge in this instance, unless this is supposed to be a much smaller species of Spinosaur, which wouldn't have coexisted with the Tyrannosaurus in general. Um, I mean, I don't mind the overall structure of the Tyrannosaurs. They're giving them quite a large build, but it's just that they were not reaching 40 to 50 feet in length, which is the size of Spinosaurus, or pushing um, somewhere between 12 to 15 or 16 meters. Okay. I guess now we're going to head forward to the Cenozoic era. Yeah, that was actually a better comparison of Spinosaurus and Tyrannosaurus. So from themeateater.com, this is probably by Steve Ranella. This invasive species is decimating native wildlife in Texas, and it's not feral hogs. Well, I wonder who this is. So in 1957, Texas Parks and Wildlife released 31 Aoudad or Barbary sheep, a species native to North Africa. Yeah, I think a little while back I might have confused like its native range with the Mouflon sheep of Western Asia, which inhabits different parts of Turkey, I believe, like Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia. This animal is exclusively native to different mountainous regions of the Sahara Desert, so different parts of Egypt, Niger, Algeria, Libya. Let's see. So it doesn't walk into Asia. The species took well to the arid Texas land, and another 40 animals were released by the following year. So today, those few dozen animals have grown to an estimated population of more than 20,000, according to Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. Um, whoa, that is staggering.
So they breed as well as a bunny.
Yeah, that is. Um, that's nuts. Considering it tends to sound like in some instances they're constantly hunted over in West Texas. Apparently not. At least not to the point of where it has a drastic impact on their population. From those initial releases in the Panhandle, Aoudad have since expanded across a large portion of the state, pushing west into the rugged mountains and deserts of the Trans-Pecos region, prime habitat for native desert bighorn sheep. That overlap has raised growing concern among wildlife professionals and hunters. 2025 TPWD surveys observed just 730 desert bighorn statewide. That is not good, especially since I heard a couple years back that there was an issue with bighorn sheep over in Texas obtaining a certain disease. So that also had negative impact on their population, but as well as competition from these Aoudad sheep. Um, okay, so let's see. Unlike bighorn, Aoudad reproduce quickly, often having two sets of twins annually, compared to a bighorn's use singular baby a year. Aoudad also compete with native sheep for limited forage, and perhaps most concerning, can carry and spread diseases that pose a serious threat to native sheep. So maybe they got the diseases from the Aoudad. Okay, geez. These concerns aren't theoretical. In 2019, desert bighorn sheep in West Texas were hit by an outbreak of pneumonia linked to Mycoplasma of pneumonia or pneumonia. Let's see, a pathogen known to cause devastating die-offs in wild sheep across North America. Prior to that, Texas desert bighorn populations had largely avoided exposure, but as Iodad populations expanded across the Trans-Pecos, researchers began to link the invasive sheep as reservoirs for the disease. Yeah, these Iodad sheep just need to be hunted to um, extinction specifically in Texas. Like, I support their conservation over in North Africa, but not here. The impact was severe. In 2019, Texas desert bighorn population was estimated at around 1,500 animals, near a historic high. By 2024, that number had dropped to fewer than 500. Aodad by whoa, that was a drop. Jeez. Aodad, by contrast, often carry the disease with few or no symptoms, allowing it to spread quickly through overlapping habitat and making the spread almost impossible to manage. Just as desert bighorn sheep begin to recover from recent pneumonia outbreaks, another potential threat is emerging on the landscape: an outbreak of infectious keratoconjunctivitis, commonly known as pink eye, is now spreading through Aodad populations in West Texas, causing severe eye infections and blindness, which can ultimately lead to death. In a recent update, Texas Parks and Wildlife officials reported that since December 2025, approximately 25 iodad showing severe clinical characteristics, blindness in one or both eyes have been documented across 30 miles. The described pink eye as a highly contagious eye infection that can be a common disease in livestock. IKC has also been described in many wildlife species.
Is that because that animals have a tendency to stick their faces in other animals' butts?
Yeah, that probably doesn't help. Let's see. It rarely affects just one animal, but spreads throughout a herd, stating it can be spread by flies, dust, and other exposed environmental vectors. In wildlife populations, there is no available treatment, and the disease naturally runs its course through the herd. Don't feel bad for this guy. Shouldn't be here anyway. So TPWD has not yet documented any cases of IKC in Texas bighorn sheep, but is closely and actively monitoring, as an outbreak can be or could be detrimental. So how are the Aodad being managed? One way is through Texas Senate Bill 1245, which went into effect September 1st, 2025, and legalized aerial harvest of Aodad. Okay.
I assume that's when they get on helicopters and shoot at them?
Yeah, but I would let's see. So I would hope this would also include a bunch of other ways of harvesting them. Through this bill, landowners and private land hunters will be able to hunt Aodad from a helicopter, a great advantage in the rough and vast West Texas terrain. It is important to note that over 93% of the land in Texas is privately owned. Therefore, wildlife management often depends on what happens beyond public ground. Additionally, as an exotic species in Texas, there is no closed season or bag limit for these animals on private land. There shouldn't be. Um, okay, so DBWD is doing their part as well, offering drawn hunt opportunities for trophy Aodad, controlling populations on public land, controlling, get rid of it, and working with partners such as Texas A&M University and the Borderlands Research Institute to better understand disease transmission.
I think one thing you've explained to me is that there are so many animals that shouldn't be where they are, which ends up destroying the ecosystem they end up inhabiting.
Yeah, it seems to be the case, especially like with feral hogs in Texas. We have about 2 million. There's 5 million in total in the United States, and they seem to have crept through Canada in recent years, but it's just a small population.
Yeah, but isn't that all it takes?
Yeah, and then they spread rapidly. What was well, there's a wide variety of different invasive species. It's not just mammals, you have those different species of invasive reptiles, birds, amphibians in Texas. But yeah, this is pretty nuts, especially with the poor bighorn sheep. Okay, well, um, guess should we wait? Okay, well, we're going to give everybody a minute for those that have any questions about prehistoric or current animals. Put it in the chat. Okay, so I would like to correct myself on something. However, when it comes to the iguanodontid Aranosaurus from you could technically say North Africa. It has not been discovered in Egypt, in fact, or Morocco. It's actually from Niger. And Niger does seem to be the hotspot for many species of Cretaceous, not just ornithischians or like the iguanodontids, but as well different species of sauropod dinosaurs and as well as the spinosaurs and even different crocodilomorphs. It has also not been discovered in Morocco either. All the specimens come specifically from Niger. It's not a very common species to be discovered. Only about two specimens have been found. However, they are quite complete. And also, it seems to be with Egypt, iguanodontids are completely non existent, at least at the moment. There are certain sauropods that are discovered in the region, but they are also not too common, at least from the early late Cretaceous. And also, when it comes to iguanodontids in Morocco, if there are any, they're quite fragmentary. Thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Happy International Neo Ornithischian Day. And remember, nothing's better than all animals all the time.